Adventure Time is one of those shows that feels warm and goofy, but it's also full of characters who are stuck in their own ways and end up causing trouble for everyone else. From ignoring how their actions hurt people to seeing everything as just a fun adventure, these flaws shape the whole world of Adventure Time in ways that don't always get talked about. In this video, we're going to talk about one bad thing about every Adventure Time character. But before we start the video, remember to subscribe to our channel. Finn the human acts first and thinks later, if at all. While fans love him for his brave heart and heroic spirit, the truth is that Finn's constant recklessness creates more problems than it solves. He jumps into dangerous situations without planning, makes life-changing decisions based on pure emotion, and drags everyone around him into chaos because he can't slow down long enough to consider consequences. Finn the human perfectly demonstrates how Finn's hasty decision-making can have catastrophic consequences. When he learns that the Lich wished for the extinction of all life, Finn's immediate reaction is to blurt out his own wish without any thought. "I wish the Lich never even existed." This snap decision completely rewrites reality and creates the farm world timeline where everything is wrong. The most telling thing about this moment is how Jake tries to interrupt Finn's hasty wish-making, saying, "I wish that life wasn't any more extinct," before Finn cuts him off. Jake is clearly trying to make a more careful, measured wish that would simply undo the Lich's damage, but Finn can't wait long enough to hear a better idea. He's so caught up in his own emotional reaction to the crisis that he assumes his first instinct is the best solution. Finn's reckless wish creates a world where his family is terrorized by gangs, magic is seen as fake, and Marceline is forced to guard a dangerous crown for centuries. None of these problems existed before, but because Finn didn't think about the consequences, he created a whole new reality of suffering and danger. In this new world, even the other Finn makes the same mistake by quickly putting on the Ice King's crown to save his family, ignoring Marceline's warnings about how dangerous it is. The episode shows how Finn's snap judgments don't just affect him, they impact entire realities and everyone living in them. Farmworld Finn's family is in danger because of choices the original Finn made without thinking about the bigger picture. Finn's quick decisions keep having big consequences that hurt other people throughout the series. What makes Finn's recklessness particularly frustrating in this episode is that he had time to think. He wasn't under immediate physical threat when he made his wish. He was safe in Prismo's time room, but Finn's emotional reaction to learning about the Lich's wish made him feel like he had to act immediately, even though careful consideration would have been much more appropriate for such a momentous decision. The wish scene also shows how Finn thinks he knows best and doesn't bother talking it over with anyone else. Prismo offers to grant wishes, and instead of discussing options with Jake or asking how the wishes work, Finn immediately makes a huge decision that changes everything. He takes charge without listening to others, and it often causes problems that could have been avoided. The Enchiridion shows Finn's rash hero complex in action and reveals how his rush to save everyone often creates unnecessary complications. Throughout the quest, Finn consistently chooses the most direct, action-oriented response to every challenge, without stopping to think about whether there might be better approaches. When he encounters the Keeper's riddle, Finn doesn't try to solve it intellectually. He just stuffs the Keeper into the lock because he thought he'd look cute stuffed in that lock. While this approach happens to work with the Keeper, it establishes Finn's pattern of going with his first gut reaction, rather than actually engaging with problems thoughtfully. When he hears cries for help from the gnomes, Finn immediately abandons his quest to rush toward the voices without considering that this might be part of the test, or that he should be more cautious about obvious traps. Finn's hasty rescue of the gnomes leads directly to the traumatic experience of watching them destroy old ladies. If Finn had taken a moment to think about the situation, why would gnomes be trapped in a lava pit right along his quest route? He might have realized it was a test and handled it more carefully. Instead, his immediate emotional reaction to hearing someone else in distress overrides any strategic thinking. The ogre encounter shows another side of Finn's recklessness, his tendency to escalate conflicts unnecessarily. When the ogre eats Jake, Finn's immediate response is physical aggression. He climbs the ogre and steals his dollar, which leads to a dangerous aerial fight that could have seriously injured both him and Jake. Finn doesn't try talking to the ogre, offering a trade, or finding a clever solution. He goes straight to theft and violence. Even when Finn tries to make things right by giving back the ogre's dollar at the end, it's only after his rash actions have already created a dangerous mess. He keeps making hasty decisions that lead to trouble, and then tries to fix it later, but he doesn't seem to learn from these experiences. The Dark Magician's test reveals the one area where Finn's quick reactions actually serve him well: his moral instincts. When asked to kill the neutral ant, Finn's immediate never response shows that his gut reactions about right and wrong are usually sound. However, this same rapid moral certainty also leads him to punch the Keeper when he sees him in Devil's pajamas, showing how his quick judgments can cause problems even when his intentions are good. What Was Missing demonstrates how Finn's emotional knee-jerk reactions can damage his relationships and make difficult situations worse. When the Door Lord steals everyone's treasures, Finn immediately throws himself into chase mode without stopping to think about what they're really dealing with, or whether there might be a smarter approach than just running after the thief. Throughout the episode, Finn's hasty attempts to fix the group's problems often make things worse. When Princess Bubblegum and Marceline start arguing, Finn's immediate reaction is to suggest a noodle break, treating a complex emotional conflict like a simple problem that could be solved with snacks and positive thinking. His well-meaning but simplistic approach shows that he doesn't understand the deeper issues between his friends. Finn's recklessness really shows when Marceline begins singing, "I'm just your problem." Instead of recognizing that this is a moment requiring emotional sensitivity and careful listening, Finn gets excited about the door responding to the music and starts coaching everyone to keep playing. He's so focused on the immediate goal of opening the door that he completely misses the emotional significance of what Marceline is revealing about her feelings. When the group starts falling apart, Finn's knee-jerk response is to give a speech about friendship and start singing, "My best friends in the world." While this ultimately works to reunite the group, it's more luck than strategy. Finn doesn't address any of the underlying issues between Princess Bubblegum and Marceline. He just applies emotional pressure for everyone to get along, because that's what he wants. The episode shows how Finn's rapid-fire optimism, while often well-intentioned, could be insensitive to other people's real emotional needs. He wants everyone to be happy and get along, so he pushes for solutions that make him feel better rather than taking the time to understand what his friends actually need from him. His approach treats symptoms rather than addressing root causes. Finn's quick-fix mentality also shows up in how he handles the Door Lord situation. Instead of trying to understand why the Door Lord is stealing things, or what the real lesson might be, Finn focuses entirely on getting their stuff back and opening the door. He misses the deeper meaning until it's explicitly spelled out for him at the end. Finn's reckless behavior particularly impacts his relationships because it makes him unreliable in situations that require patience and emotional intelligence. In Finn the Human, his hasty wish-making creates problems that other people have to live with. In the Enchiridion, his rush to be heroic puts him in unnecessary danger that could leave his friends without his help. In What Was Missing, his focus on quick fixes prevents him from providing real emotional support. Other characters often have to compensate for Finn's snap decision-making, which puts unfair pressure on them to be the responsible ones. Jake frequently serves as Finn's voice of reason, trying to slow him down or suggest alternatives to his more reckless ideas. Princess Bubblegum and Marceline have to deal with the emotional fallout when Finn's attempts to help don't address their actual problems. Finn's reactionary nature also limits his growth as a hero and as a person. Because he relies so heavily on gut reactions and immediate action, he doesn't develop the patience and analytical skills that would make him more effective in complex situations. He keeps making the same types of mistakes because he doesn't slow down long enough to learn from his experiences. The pattern becomes particularly problematic as Finn faces increasingly complex moral and emotional situations. His black and white thinking and immediate action approach work fine for simple save the princess scenarios, but they become inadequate when dealing with nuanced interpersonal conflicts, or situations where the right answer isn't immediately obvious. Finn's rash heroism also teaches him unhealthy patterns about problem solving. He learns to trust his first instincts and immediate emotional reactions, rather than develop critical thinking skills or learning to seek advice from others. This makes him overconfident in situations where caution and consultation would be much more appropriate. His tendency to act without thinking also means he often misses important information that could help him make better decisions. In the Enchiridion, he doesn't pay attention to the Keeper's warnings about the trials ahead. In What Was Missing, he doesn't pick up on the emotional subtext of what's happening between his friends. Finn's hasty nature creates a cycle where his good intentions lead to problems, which then require more heroic action to fix, which often creates new problems. This keeps him busy and feeling useful, but it doesn't actually make him more effective or help him develop better judgment over time. The most frustrating aspect of Finn's recklessness is how it often undermines his genuine desire to help people. He has a good heart and really wants to make things better, but his inability to think things through means his help sometimes causes more harm than good. His quick emotional reactions, while coming from a place of caring, don't always match what the situation actually requires. What makes Finn's reactionary behavior particularly problematic is how it affects his ability to handle increasingly complex challenges. Early in the series, his simple approach works because the situations are straightforward. But as he faces more complicated moral dilemmas and relationship issues, his rush-to-action approach becomes less effective and sometimes harmful. Until Finn learns to balance his heroic instincts with patience and planning, he'll continue creating problems while trying to solve them. Finn's quick decisions cause trouble, and things only get worse when Jake's laziness and lack of effort make everything harder. Jake the dog is the ultimate slacker who treats life like one big chill session. While fans love him for his laid-back attitude and funny one-liners, the truth is that Jake's constant laziness and avoidance of responsibility consistently creates problems for everyone around him. He'd rather take a nap, play video games, or make jokes than deal with serious situations that require actual effort or emotional maturity. This is selfish behavior that forces other people to pick up his slack while he coasts through life without consequences. Burning Low shows Jake's lazy approach to serious situations and his complete failure to take responsibility when it matters most. When Princess Bubblegum desperately tries to explain why Finn can't be with Flame Princess, Jake literally falls asleep during her explanation because he finds it boring. This is actively choosing to tune out important information because paying attention requires effort he doesn't want to make. Jake's decision to sleep through Princess Bubblegum's warning about Flame Princess's dangerous elemental matrix shows his fundamental approach to problems. If it's not immediately entertaining or easy to understand, he simply checks out. Princess Bubblegum is trying to prevent a potential world-ending disaster, but Jake can't be bothered to stay awake long enough to understand the stakes. His laziness literally puts the entire planet at risk because he refuses to engage with information that might require him to take action. When Jake does wake up, he completely misinterprets the situation because he missed all the crucial context. Instead of asking Princess Bubblegum to repeat her explanation or admitting he wasn't paying attention, Jake jumps to the lazy conclusion that she's just jealous of Finn and Flame Princess. This assumption requires zero effort on his part and conveniently means he doesn't have to think about complex magical science or take any responsibility for helping solve the problem. Jake's laziness becomes even more damaging when he actively encourages Finn's relationship with Flame Princess without understanding the dangers involved. He gives Finn advice about dating tiers and suggests writing a sappy poem to advance the relationship, all while being completely ignorant of the catastrophic consequences this could have. His casual attitude towards something that could literally destroy the world shows how his laziness extends beyond personal inconvenience to genuine negligence. The most telling moment comes when Princess Bubblegum finally explains the full danger to Jake after he's been actively working against her efforts to protect everyone. Instead of feeling guilty about his role in nearly causing a planetary disaster, Jake just accepts the information and moves on without any self-reflection about how his laziness almost led to the end of the world. He doesn't apologize to Princess Bubblegum for undermining her efforts, or acknowledge that his failure to pay attention put everyone in danger. Jake's lazy approach also hurts Finn, who trusts his advice about relationships. Because Jake couldn't be bothered to understand the real situation, he gives Finn guidance that nearly kills him and could have destroyed everything Finn cares about. When Finn gets seriously burned from kissing Flame Princess, Jake shows concern, but he doesn't seem to grasp that his own negligence contributed to the disaster. Jake the dad reveals how Jake's laziness affects his ability to be a responsible parent, and shows his pattern of avoiding difficult situations even when they involve his own children. When Jake becomes a father to 5 puppies, his first instinct is to rely entirely on his mother's automated holo message system, because actually thinking about parenting seems too hard. Jake's decision to follow the holo manual blindly, instead of using his own judgment, shows his fundamental approach to responsibility. Find the easiest possible solution that requires the least effort on his part. He doesn't want to think about what his children actually need or develop his own parenting style. He just wants to follow instructions so he doesn't have to make difficult decisions or deal with uncertainty. When Jake panics about the puppies not moving and the holo message tells him that they might be dead, his response shows how his laziness has left him completely unprepared for real parenting challenges. Instead of using common sense to realize that sleeping puppies are normal, Jake freaks out because he hasn't bothered to learn anything about child development or animal behavior. His total reliance on the manual means he has no foundation of knowledge to fall back on when the manual gives unhelpful or alarming advice. Jake's laziness also shows up in how he handles the puppy's desire to explore and play. Instead of engaging with them actively or thinking about age-appropriate activities, Jake puts them on leashes and tells them to not do anything so they can all take a nap. This approach treats parenting like an inconvenience to be managed, rather than an opportunity to guide and nurture his children's development. When Jake falls asleep during their walk and the puppies escape to have fun on their own, it reveals how his laziness creates the very problems he's trying to avoid. If Jake had been actively engaged with his children instead of looking for ways to minimize his effort, he could have supervised their play safely, instead of having to frantically chase them around when they inevitably get into trouble. The most damaging aspect of Jake's lazy parenting is how it teaches his children that they can't rely on him to be present and engaged. When the foxes threaten Jake and the puppies have to save him, it shows how his failure to take responsibility has reversed the parent-child dynamic. The children are taking care of the parent instead of the other way around, which puts unfair pressure on them and undermines Jake's authority as a father figure. Jake only realizes that the manual's a bunch of junk when his daughter, Jake Jr., tells him so. He doesn't figure it out through his own experience or reflection. He needs a child to point out that he's been approaching parenting all wrong. His laziness keeps him from developing wisdom or learning from his mistakes because he's not putting in the mental effort to grow. Even Jake's decision to move back to the tree fort at the end of the episode reflects his lazy approach to responsibility. Instead of staying engaged with his children as they grow and change, Jake decides they don't really need him around and returns to his easier, more comfortable life with Finn. While he frames this as the puppies being able to take care of themselves, it's really Jake taking the path of least resistance, rather than adapting to his new role as a father. My Two Favorite People demonstrates Jake's lazy approach to relationship problems and his tendency to look for quick fixes rather than addressing underlying issues. When Jake realizes he's missing out on time with either Finn or Lady Rainicorn depending on who he's with, his solution is to get them to hang out together so he doesn't have to make any effort to balance his relationships. Jake's plan to get Finn and Lady Rainicorn to become friends seems considerate on the surface, but it's really just him trying to avoid the work of maintaining separate relationships. Instead of spending quality time with each of them individually, or having honest conversations about scheduling, Jake wants to create a situation where all his social needs are met simultaneously, with minimal effort on his part. When the language barrier creates problems between Finn and Lady Rainicorn, Jake's response shows his lazy approach to problem solving. Instead of helping them find ways to connect despite the communication issue, or serving as a patient translator, Jake decides they need a universal translator device. This technological solution appeals to Jake because it removes the need for him to actively facilitate their interactions. The dangerous quest to retrieve the translator from Lake Zelazan shows how Jake's laziness often leads to unnecessarily complicated solutions. Rather than working with the natural dynamics between Finn and Lady Rainicorn, or helping them find common ground through shared activities, Jake creates an elaborate adventure that puts everyone at risk just to avoid the ongoing effort of helping them communicate. Jake's problems get worse when the translator gives Lady Rainicorn an old man voice that makes her interactions with Finn weird and uncomfortable. Instead of recognizing that this technological fix has created new problems, Jake just accepts the awkwardness because addressing it would require him to think of better solutions. His laziness traps him in a situation that's worse than the original problem. When Finn and Lady Rainicorn start bonding without Jake and he feels left out, his response reveals the selfish motivation behind his original plan. Jake didn't really want his two favorite people to become friends for their benefit. He wanted them to get along so he could spend time with them both simultaneously. When they develop an independent friendship that doesn't center around him, Jake gets jealous and sabotages their relationship by bringing in Tiffany. Jake's decision to make Finn and Lady Rainicorn jealous by hanging out with Tiffany shows his lazy approach to conflict resolution. Instead of talking to them about feeling left out or finding healthy ways to approach his jealousy, Jake creates drama and manipulates the situation to get attention. This approach requires less emotional vulnerability than honest communication, but creates much bigger problems for everyone involved. Jake's laziness particularly impacts Finn, who often has to compensate for Jake's lack of engagement and responsibility. In Burning Low, Finn doesn't get the guidance he needs about his relationship with Flame Princess because Jake can't be bothered to pay attention to important information. In Jake the Dad, Finn has to adjust to Jake essentially abandoning their friendship for family responsibilities, then abandoning those responsibilities to return to their old dynamic. Other characters also suffer from Jake's lazy approach to relationships and responsibilities. Princess Bubblegum's efforts to prevent disaster in Burning Low are undermined by Jake's refusal to take her seriously. Lady Rainicorn has to deal with Jake's jealousy and manipulation in My Two Favorite People because he's too lazy to communicate his feelings honestly. Jake's children in Jake the Dad don't get the engaged, thoughtful parenting they deserve because Jake takes shortcuts and relies on automated advice. Jake's laziness also limits his own growth and development as a character because he consistently looks for the easiest solutions and avoids difficult emotional work. He doesn't develop better skills for handling complex situations. His patterns of avoidance and quick fixes prevent him from learning from his mistakes or becoming more capable of handling adult responsibilities. The most frustrating aspect of Jake's laziness is how it's often disguised as being laid back or easygoing. While these can be positive qualities, Jake's version involves actively avoiding responsibility and effort, even when the stakes are high. His relaxed attitude becomes harmful when it prevents him from engaging with serious problems that require his attention and action. Jake's lazy approach to problem solving also creates a cycle where small issues become bigger problems because he doesn't address them early. His failure to pay attention in Burning Low turns a manageable situation into a near catastrophe. His shortcuts in parenting in Jake the Dad create unnecessary stress and danger for his family. His avoidance of honest communication in My Two Favorite People leads to jealousy and relationship drama. What makes Jake's laziness particularly problematic is how it affects people who depend on him. Finn looks to Jake as an older brother figure and trusted advisor, but Jake's disengagement means Finn often doesn't get the support he needs. Jake's children need an involved, thoughtful father, but his lazy approach to parenting leaves them essentially raising themselves. Lady Rainicorn deserves a partner who will work through relationship challenges with her, but Jake's shortcuts and avoidance create more problems than they solve. Until Jake learns to embrace responsibility and put in genuine effort when the situations require it, he'll continue to let down the people who matter most to him. His natural, easygoing personality could be a real strength if he learned to balance it with engagement and accountability, but his current approach of avoiding anything that requires sustained effort or emotional maturity makes him unreliable when people need him most. Jake's laziness makes everyone else fix his messes, and now we see how Princess Bubblegum treats people like they're just tools to get what she wants. Princess Bubblegum treats people like chess pieces instead of living beings, while fans often admire her intelligence and dedication to protecting the Candy Kingdom. The truth is that Princess Bubblegum's cold calculation and ruthless pursuit of control consistently hurt the people around her. She makes harsh decisions without considering the emotional cost to others, manipulates situations to get what she wants, and shows little genuine warmth even to her closest friends. The Vault reveals Princess Bubblegum's capacity for ruthless, long-term thinking, and her willingness to let people suffer for what she believes serves a larger purpose. The episode shows through Finn's past life as Shoko that Princess Bubblegum has been making cold, calculated decisions for centuries. When she befriends Shoko and gives her a mechanical arm as a gift, it seems like a genuine kindness, but the larger context reveals a more complex and troubling pattern. Princess Bubblegum's decision to create the Gumball Guardians using her amulet shows her willingness to put security systems over personal relationships. She doesn't hesitate to create powerful weapons that could harm people, including someone like Shoko who has helped her. When Shoko tries to steal the amulet, Princess Bubblegum's immediate response is to order the Gumball Guardians to attack, even though she knows Shoko and understands her difficult circumstances. The most damaging aspect of Princess Bubblegum's coldness in this episode is how she handles Shoko's death. When Shoko falls into the toxic waste, and the Gumball Guardian's hand gets burned trying to save her, Princess Bubblegum simply tells the Guardian to take a break for the night and walks away. She doesn't try to find another way to save Shoko, doesn't mourn her loss, and doesn't seem to feel responsible for creating the situation that led to her death. Princess Bubblegum's reaction to Shoko's death shows her basic approach to relationships. People are expendable if saving them would interfere with her larger goals. She created a security system knowing it would be dangerous, activated it knowing it could hurt people, and when it resulted in someone's death, she simply accepted it as a necessary cost. Her ability to compartmentalize emotions and move on from tragedy without processing the human cost shows a deeply cold and calculating nature. The episode also reveals that Princess Bubblegum has been lying about her age for centuries, presenting herself as a teenager when she's actually ancient. This deception shows her willingness to manipulate even basic facts about herself to maintain control over how others perceive her. She's been calculating and controlling relationships for hundreds of years, using false information to shape how people interact with her. You Made Me demonstrates Princess Bubblegum's cold approach to dealing with the problems she creates through her scientific experiments. When the Earl of Lemongrab becomes a disturbing presence in the Candy Kingdom, Princess Bubblegum's response is to find ways to control and contain him. Princess Bubblegum's suggestion that the Pup Gang should live with Lemongrab shows her willingness to use other people as solutions to her problems, without considering what's best for them. She doesn't care about the Pup Gang's safety or well-being. She just wants them to serve as a distraction for Lemongrab so he'll stop bothering her citizens. When this plan fails and Lemongrab tortures the Pup Gang with his reconditioning chamber, Princess Bubblegum doesn't take responsibility for putting them in that situation. Her attempt to teach Lemongrab how to interact with candy people reveals her coldly analytical approach to emotions and relationships. Instead of trying to understand why Lemongrab is struggling, or addressing his feelings of loneliness and inadequacy, she tries to train him like he's a broken machine. She treats his emotional problems as technical issues that can be solved through proper instruction, rather than recognizing that he needs genuine connection and understanding. When Lemongrab becomes violent and threatens her with his sound sword, Princess Bubblegum's solution is typically cold and calculated. She creates another Lemongrab to keep the first one occupied. This approach treats Lemongrab's emotional needs as a problem to be managed, rather than something that deserves genuine attention and care. She doesn't try to help him develop better coping mechanisms or address his underlying issues. She just gives him a companion and considers the problem solved. Princess Bubblegum's creation of Lemongrab 2 also shows her willingness to create new life forms as solutions to her problems, without considering the ethical implications. She's essentially creating a sentient being whose primary purpose is to keep another one of her creations from causing trouble. This treats conscious beings like tools to be deployed, rather than individuals with their own rights and needs. Princess Cookie reveals Princess Bubblegum's harsh approach to justice and her inability to show mercy even when circumstances clearly call for compassion. When Baby Snaps takes hostages because of his childhood trauma related to her thoughtless laughter at his dreams, Princess Bubblegum's response is entirely focused on law and order rather than understanding or addressing the root cause of his behavior. Princess Bubblegum's refusal to consider Jake's suggestion that they let Princess Cookie escape shows her rigid approach to justice. Even when Jake explains Cookie's tragic backstory and his genuine desire to help children, Princess Bubblegum insists that Cookie is a menace, who must be imprisoned for his life. She shows no interest in rehabilitation, no consideration of Cookie's mental state, and no recognition of her own role in creating his problems. The most telling moment is when Princess Bubblegum uses a trap horse for Cookie's escape, a horse with a hidden banana guard inside, ready to capture him. She's willing to be dishonest and manipulative, even with someone who's clearly struggling and desperate. Instead of showing mercy or trying to help, she sets up an elaborate trick that gives him false hope and then crushes it. Princess Bubblegum's approach to the hostage situation prioritizes maintaining her authority over addressing the underlying problems that caused it. She doesn't reflect on whether her childhood interaction with Baby Snaps was harmful, doesn't consider how she might prevent similar situations in the future, and doesn't show any empathy for someone who's clearly suffering from mental illness and trauma. When Cookie ends up in the mental hospital after his suicide attempt, Princess Bubblegum shows no interest in visiting him or making amends for her role in his suffering. She treats his breakdown and institutionalization as a successful resolution to the problem, rather than recognizing the human tragedy involved. Her coldness towards someone she inadvertently harmed as a child shows how little she values individual emotional well-being compared to maintaining order. Princess Bubblegum's coldness particularly impacts the people who care about her and look to her for guidance. Finn consistently seeks her approval and support, but her emotional distance and calculated responses leave him feeling confused and hurt. She treats his feelings for her as inconveniences to be managed rather than genuine emotions that deserve respect and consideration. Her relationship with Marceline also suffers from her inability to be emotionally open and vulnerable. Princess Bubblegum's cold and controlled demeanor prevents her from addressing the underlying tension in the relationship or acknowledging Marceline's emotional needs. She approaches their conflict from a logical rather than emotional perspective, which makes resolution impossible. Princess Bubblegum's coldness also affects her subjects, who often bear the cost of her calculated decisions. The Pup Gang suffers because she uses them as a solution to her lemon grab problem. Cookie's life is destroyed because she can't show mercy or recognize her own role in his trauma. Shoko dies because Princess Bubblegum prioritizes security over individual safety. Her scientific approach to leadership means she often treats people like variables in an equation, rather than individuals with their own needs and feelings. She makes decisions based on what will produce the best outcomes for the kingdom as a whole, but she rarely considers the emotional or personal cost to the individuals involved. Princess Bubblegum's coldness also limits her own growth in relationships. Her inability to be vulnerable or show genuine emotion prevents her from forming deep connections with others. She remains isolated in her role as ruler, unable to experience the kind of meaningful relationships that could provide emotional support and personal fulfillment. Her calculating nature also makes her unable to learn from her mistakes in a meaningful way. When her actions hurt people, she doesn't engage with the emotional reality of that harm. She just adjusts her strategies to be more effective next time. This means she continues to repeat patterns of coldness and manipulation because she never fully understands their human cost. The most frustrating aspect of Princess Bubblegum's coldness is how it's often disguised as wisdom or necessity. She frames her harsh decisions as being for the greater good, but this justification allows her to avoid taking responsibility for the individual harm she causes. Her intelligence and position of authority make people accept her coldness as the price of effective leadership. Princess Bubblegum's ruthless approach to problems often creates new problems that could have been avoided with more empathy and emotional intelligence. Cookie's breakdown, Lemon Grab's violence, and Shoko's death all stem partly from Princess Bubblegum's inability to address emotional needs and human complexity with genuine care and understanding. Her pattern of treating people as means to an end rather than individuals worthy of consideration creates a cycle where her subjects either become dependent on her approval or rebel against her authority. She doesn't inspire genuine loyalty based on trust and respect. She maintains control through manipulation and calculated responses that keep people off balance. What makes Princess Bubblegum's coldness particularly damaging is how it affects the people who are already vulnerable. Cookie was a traumatized orphan, Lemon Grab was struggling with isolation and inadequacy, and Shoko was trapped by threats from dangerous criminals. Instead of showing extra compassion for people in difficult circumstances, Princess Bubblegum treats them with the same cold calculation she applies to everything else. Princess Bubblegum's intelligence could be a great thing if she actually cared about her people, but she's so focused on power and control that she forgets people have feelings. Her coldness keeps her alone and miserable, unable to have real friendships that might actually make her happy. Princess Bubblegum's cold ways leave people feeling used and empty, while Marceline's refusal to open up just pushes everyone away who tries to care about her. If you're enjoying our video so far, make sure to subscribe to our channel. Marceline the Vampire Queen might be one of Adventure Time's most beloved characters, but she's also one of its most emotionally destructive. Fans love to see her as this cool, misunderstood anti-hero who's just dealing with trauma from her past. But if you actually look at how she treats people, there's a pattern that's pretty hard to ignore. Marceline consistently chooses emotional avoidance and self-isolation over genuine connection, and it hurts everyone around her. This is a deliberate choice she makes over and over again, even when people she supposedly cares about are reaching out to her. She'd rather push people away, manipulate them, or just disappear entirely than deal with actual feelings. And the worst part? She's got eternity to keep doing this. The most painful example of this shows up in I Remember You, where Marceline's emotional cowardice becomes genuinely cruel. Here's Ice King, clearly desperate and lonely, asking for help with something as simple as writing a song. Her first reaction is to tell him to get lost. She knows exactly who he is, Simon, someone she once loved deeply, but she can't bring herself to bridge that gap. When Ice King starts singing about being alone and needing pretty much anyone, it should break your heart. This is someone crying out for connection, for any kind of acknowledgement that he matters to someone. And Marceline just sits there, visibly uncomfortable, unable to do anything but call him an annoying, pitiful old man. She admits she's glad to see him, but then immediately undermines it with insults. The really messed up part happens when Ice King finds those old photos and notes from when he was Simon. These are his own words, expressing his fear of losing himself and losing Marceline as the crown transforms his mind. Instead of helping him understand what this means, Marceline makes him sing these words back to her like it's some kind of performance. She's literally forcing him to perform his own tragedy while he has no idea what he's singing about. Think about how twisted that is. She could help him remember, or at least help him understand why these words matter. Instead, she uses his confusion for her own emotional needs, getting to hear Simon's voice and words without having to deal with the reality of who he's become. It's selfish and cruel, and it leaves Ice King even more confused than before. This pattern shows up right before her first appearance in Evicted. Instead of just explaining that she used to live in the tree fort, Marceline chooses intimidation and mind games. She breaks in during a storm while Finn is already scared, uses her vampire powers to terrify him, and then kicks them out. She could have knocked on the door like a normal person and explained the situation, but that would require actual communication. But it gets worse. When Finn and Jake find a new place to live and throw a party, Marceline shows up again. She reveals another carved M, and kicks them out of their second home too. She's keeping them constantly off balance, so she never has to develop an actual relationship with them. The message is clear. She'd rather be feared than known. Fear is simple and keeps people at a safe distance. Friendship is messy and requires vulnerability. So when Finn finally stands up to her, instead of respecting his courage or engaging honestly, she escalates to violence. She turns into a giant bat and tries to hurt him, only backing down when he actually manages to hurt her back. Even her gift of returning their home feels more like a power play than genuine kindness. She frames it as her being generous rather than acknowledging that maybe they had a right to be upset about being kicked out, twice. Sky Witch shows how this emotional avoidance forces others to make sacrifices for her. Marceline desperately wants to get Hambo back, clearly one of her most precious possessions, but she can't bring herself to be honest about why it matters. Instead, she lies to Princess Bubblegum, claiming she just wants to hang out when she really needs help with what's obviously an emotional emergency. When Princess Bubblegum dismisses Hambo as just a doll, Marceline's response is telling. Instead of explaining that this toy represents her connection to Simon, her childhood, everything she lost in the apocalypse, she threatens violence. She makes airplane noises while moving her fist towards Bubblegum's face. She'd rather intimidate someone into helping her than admit she's vulnerable. This is especially frustrating because Princess Bubblegum clearly cares about Marceline. There's a photo of them together in Bubblegum's closet, and she sleeps in that rock shirt Marceline gave her. She would have helped regardless if Marceline had just been honest, but Marceline can't do it. She can't say, "This matters to me," or "I'm hurting," or "I need help." The tragedy here is that Marceline's emotional unavailability forces Princess Bubblegum to figure everything out herself and then make a huge sacrifice. Because Marceline won't explain why Hambo is important, Bubblegum has to trade away her own most treasured possession, that same rock shirt, to get it back. Marceline's inability to be emotionally honest literally costs someone she cares about their most precious keepsake. And how does Marceline respond to this incredible sacrifice? She doesn't. This episode ends without her ever acknowledging what Princess Bubblegum gave up for her, because that would require the kind of emotional vulnerability and gratitude that Marceline consistently avoids. The damage this causes goes beyond just hurt feelings. Simon/Ice King suffers because Marceline won't help him understand their connection. Every interaction leaves him more confused and isolated because she can't bridge the gap between who he was and who he's become. Her anger might be understandable, but it doesn't help anyone. Finn and Jake learn to see Marceline as someone unpredictable and dangerous rather than a potential friend. Her games and manipulation teach them to be wary instead of open. This sets up future interactions based on caution and fear rather than trust. Princess Bubblegum gets the worst of it. Despite clearly loving Marceline, she's forced to navigate around Marceline's emotional walls through guesswork and sacrifice. The relationship becomes one-sided, with Bubblegum doing all the emotional work while Marceline takes without giving back. What makes this especially frustrating is that Marceline is immortal. Most people are eventually forced to confront their emotional issues because life doesn't give them a choice, but Marceline can literally fly away from any uncomfortable situation. She can intimidate people into leaving her alone. She can outlive any temporary discomfort. Her powers enable her avoidance in ways that make change less likely. This means her emotional stagnation is potentially eternal. While other Adventure Time characters grow and develop, Marceline remains stuck in the same defensive patterns. She's had centuries to work on this stuff, and she's chosen not to. A lot of fans defend Marceline by pointing to her traumatic past. Losing Simon, surviving the apocalypse, dealing with centuries of loss. These are real traumas that explain her emotional walls. But understanding why someone behaves badly doesn't excuse the impact of that behavior on others. The uncomfortable truth is that Marceline's trauma has become a justification for ongoing emotional cruelty. She repeatedly hurts people who care about her, not because she can't do better, but because it's easier than facing her own pain. This makes her sympathetic, but it doesn't make her innocent. Consider how different these episodes could have been if Marceline had chosen honesty over avoidance. She could have helped Simon understand their connection instead of using his confusion for her own needs. She could have approached Finn and Jake as potential friends instead of targets for manipulation. She could have trusted Princess Bubblegum with the truth about why Hambo mattered. In every case, emotional honesty would have led to better outcomes for everyone. The fact that Marceline consistently chooses the path that's easier for her, but harder for everyone else, reveals something troubling about her priorities. Marceline is a victim of her own choices. She has people who genuinely care about her, but she can't bring herself to care back in any meaningful way. Her suffering is largely self-imposed, which makes it harder to sympathize with rather than easier. The real tragedy is that she has the power to change, to reach out, to be honest about her needs and feelings. And she chooses not to. She's built a prison of emotional avoidance around herself, and unlike her vampirism, this curse is entirely of her own making. She could open the door anytime she wants, but she'd rather stay locked inside than risk getting hurt again. That might make for compelling television, but it also makes Marceline one of Adventure Time's most frustrating characters. Her coolness is really just another word for emotional cowardice, and everyone around her pays the price for it. Marceline's emotional walls hurt those around her, but Ice King's selfishness takes it even further, causing real damage to everyone he encounters. Ice King, Simon Petrikov. Ice King might seem like a harmless, bumbling villain who just wants friends, but that's exactly the problem. He wants friends so badly that he's become completely selfish about it. He can't see how his actions hurt people because he's too busy thinking about what he wants. While fans feel sorry for him because of his sad backstory as Simon, the truth is that Ice King puts his own needs above everyone else's safety and feelings, and he causes real damage because of it. Ice King literally can't see other people as real human beings with their own lives and problems. Whether he's kidnapping princesses, forcing Finn and Jake to be his friends, or spreading disease because he wants to show off, Ice King always puts what he wants first. The crown might have messed up his brain, but it also brought out the worst parts of who he could be. You can see this most clearly in What Have You Done?, where Ice King creates a plague that makes everyone sick, then refuses to help fix it. The episode starts with Ice King showing off by making snow fall from his beard. He wants to impress Princess Bubblegum, so he just does it without asking if she wants to see it or thinking about what might happen. When the snow turns out to be infected and gives everyone freezer burn flu, Ice King's reaction tells you everything about his character. Princess Bubblegum comes to him desperate for help. She explains that people are sick because of what he did. She even brings recording equipment to show this is serious. But Ice King is so wrapped up in his own fantasy that he thinks she's trying to hit on him. Think about how messed up that is. An entire kingdom is suffering because of something he did, and all he cares about is whether Princess Bubblegum might finally like him. He doesn't ask about the sick people, he doesn't feel bad about what happened, he doesn't even understand there's a real problem. When she begs him for help in the name of common decency, he basically says, "So you want to date me?" Ice King can't process information unless it's about him. The sick candy people might as well not exist because they don't matter to his romantic fantasies. Even when people are literally dying from something he caused, he only cares about what it means for his love life. Later in the episode, when Finn tricks him into howling by pretending to be dead, you see even more of Ice King's selfishness. He cries dramatically over Finn's body and acts like losing his friend is the worst thing ever, but the second he thinks Finn is actually dead, he tells Gunter to throw away the carcass. No grief, no sadness, no wondering what went wrong. Once Finn stops being useful for making Ice King feel good about having a friend, he becomes trash. Simon and Marcy makes Ice King's selfishness even worse because it shows us what he used to be like. The flashback shows Simon as genuinely caring and selfless. He puts on the crown even though he knows it will mess up his head, because he has to protect little Marceline. He spends all his energy making her laugh, finding her food, keeping her happy, even while he's slowly losing his mind. But here's what makes this so sad. The crown didn't just erase Simon's memories, it flipped his whole personality. Simon was selfless, Ice King is selfish. Simon protected people, Ice King hurts them. Simon put Marceline first. Ice King puts himself first no matter what. The episode ends with Marceline telling this story to Finn and Jake while Ice King plays basketball with them. He has no idea the story is about him and Marceline. When he asks what happens next, Marceline says they lived happily ever after to protect his feelings. But Ice King doesn't notice she's sad or wonder why this story might be emotional for her. He just goes back to basketball and tells her to keep telling these stories while he shows off. Even in this moment that could be about connection and understanding, Ice King makes it about himself. He doesn't care about the story except as background entertainment while he plays sports. The fact that this represents centuries of pain for Marceline doesn't even cross his mind.
Loyalty to the king shows Ice King's selfishness through how he handles being rejected and lonely. When Engagement Ring Princess escapes, instead of thinking about why she might have left or how his behavior affects others, Ice King immediately starts planning how to get more princesses to like him. He shaves his beard and starts working out, but it's all about making himself more appealing rather than actually becoming a better person. When Slime Princess accidentally calls him the nice king, Ice King goes along with the lie because it gets him attention. He doesn't care that he's tricking her or that their whole relationship is based on her not knowing who he really is. All that matters to him is that someone finally likes him, so he builds an entire fake identity around it. He even builds a sandcastle and starts collecting princesses like they're objects he can sort through to find the perfect wife. Ice King tricks Finn and Jake into helping him by making them his nice knights, but he only uses them to do the dirty work he doesn't want to do himself. When Finn feels bad about making princesses cry and wants to treat them better, Ice King gets angry and threatens him instead of listening. He doesn't care that he's forcing these good kids to act against their nature, he just wants them to solve his problems for him. The whole episode shows how Ice King can't see past his own wants and needs. He watches Lumpy Space Princess hurt herself trying to win his approval and feels nothing. He imprisons multiple princesses and calls it a waiting room to make himself feel better. Even when his beard starts growing back and threatens to expose his lie, he only cares about keeping up his act long enough to pick a bride. Everyone else's feelings and well-being don't matter, as long as he gets what he wants.
In What Have You Done?, his showing off creates a medical emergency that could have killed people. His refusal to help means Finn and Jake have to trick him to save lives, forcing them to lie and manipulate when they're normally honest. Princess Bubblegum suffers constantly because of Ice King's behavior. She has to deal with his harassment while trying to run a kingdom and protect her people. When his thoughtless actions create a crisis, she wastes time and energy trying to get help from the person who caused her problem. Her breakdown at the end of the episode, fainting from relief when people are finally cured, shows how much stress Ice King puts on everyone around him. Marceline has it worst of all. She has to watch someone she loved become a completely different person, but she can't even properly grieve because he's still there physically. Ice King's inability to recognize their connection means she's constantly reminded of what she lost, while getting none of the comfort that shared memories might bring. Finn and Jake get dragged into Ice King's schemes over and over. Time they could spend helping people or having adventures gets wasted managing Ice King's feelings and cleaning up his messes. They're naturally kind kids who want to help others, but Ice King treats their compassion like something he's entitled to. What makes Ice King's selfishness especially frustrating is how it stops him from ever getting better. Because he can't see past his own wants, he never learns from his mistakes or figures out better ways to treat people. Every episode basically resets him to the same selfish, delusional state. He can't process feedback, so even when bad things happen because of his behavior, he doesn't learn anything. When Princess Bubblegum rejects him, he doesn't think maybe his approach is wrong. He assumes she's playing hard to get. When Finn and Jake avoid him, he doesn't wonder if his behavior is the problem, he just comes up with more elaborate ways to force their attention. This creates a character who never changes and whose presence in other people's lives is purely negative. Unlike other Adventure Time characters who grow over time, Ice King stays trapped in the same patterns, making the same mistakes and causing the same harm. The crown definitely caused Ice King's condition, but that doesn't excuse his current behavior. The crown might have started his transformation, but right now, Ice King makes choices about how to treat people. He chooses to put his emotional needs first. He chooses to interpret everything through the lens of what he wants instead of trying to understand what others need. Looking at Simon versus Ice King actually proves this point. Simon fought against the crown's influence as long as he could, trying to stay himself for Marceline's sake. Ice King seems to have given up completely, using his condition as an excuse for behavior that would be unacceptable from anyone else. The really sad irony is that Ice King's selfishness prevents him from getting what he claims to want most, real friendship. His inability to think about what other people want makes it impossible for anyone to actually enjoy his company. He could potentially have genuine relationships with people like Finn and Jake, who are naturally kind and want to help others, but his selfish approach drives them away. If Ice King could learn to think about what others want instead of just what he wants, he might actually get some of what he's looking for, but his delusional thinking makes this impossible. He's built a fantasy world where only his desires matter, and he gets angry when reality doesn't cooperate. Ice King represents something really uncomfortable about human nature, how self-centeredness can become so complete that it destroys our inability to connect with others. His condition might be magical, but his selfishness feels recognizably human. He's not evil like a traditional villain, but his thoughtlessness makes him almost more destructive because he's not trying to hurt people. He just doesn't care if he does. The crown might have taken away Simon's memories and changed how he looks, but it seems to have revealed something that was always potentially there: the human ability to become completely self-absorbed. Ice King is what happens when someone gets so focused on their own emotional needs that everyone else just becomes objects to be used. It's both fantastical and uncomfortably believable. Ice King will probably never change because change requires being able to see yourself clearly and care about how you affect others. As long as he's trapped in his own head, thinking only about what he wants and needs, he'll keep hurting people around him while wondering why nobody wants to be his friend. He's become his own worst enemy, but he's too selfish to realize it. Ice King's selfishness harms others, while BMO's focus on itself makes everyone else just part of its own adventure. BMO might be Adventure Time's most adorable character, but there's something weird about how they see the world. Everyone thinks BMO is just innocent and fun, but if you actually watch how they act, BMO treats everyone else like they're just there to make BMO's life more interesting. They can't see past their own wants and ideas, and it causes real problems for the people who care about them. BMO just can't think about anyone except themselves. Whether they're playing detective, going on adventures, or dealing with serious problems, BMO only cares about how things affect their story. Everyone else gets turned into background characters for BMO's entertainment. You can see this clearly in BMO Noir, where BMO turns Finn's missing sock into some big dramatic mystery instead of just helping find it. When Finn and Jake get into an argument about the sock, BMO doesn't try to help them work it out or even look for the sock normally. Instead, they immediately decide this is perfect material for their detective fantasy. BMO creates this whole imaginary world with suspects and love triangles using pets around the house. They interrogate Ronnie the mouse, have fake conversations with Lorraine the chicken, and even imagine someone getting murdered. But none of this has anything to do with actually finding Finn's sock or helping solve the real problem. While BMO is playing detective and having fun with their noir story, Finn is genuinely upset about his missing sock. Finn and Jake are fighting, and BMO could actually help by looking for the sock or trying to calm things down. Instead, BMO uses their friend's fight as entertainment. The really messed up part is how the episode ends. BMO solves the case by finding the sock in Finn's pillow, meaning they could have found it right away if they just looked instead of playing around. Finn and Jake are happy the sock is found, but they don't know that BMO wasted time on made-up drama while they were actually fighting. BMO gets praised for solving the case, when really they just delayed finding a simple solution so they could have more fun. BMO Lost shows how selfish BMO gets even when they're in real danger. When the eagle takes BMO far from home, they should be scared and focused on getting back safely. Instead, BMO immediately starts treating the whole thing like an adventure story where they're the hero. BMO meets Bubble, who's been lost and alone for a long time. This should be a moment where they help each other and bond over being in the same situation. But BMO can't relate to Bubble as another lost person. They immediately start bragging about how their friends Finn and Jake will fix everything. BMO acts like they're the important one with connections, while Bubble is just a sidekick. When they find the baby, BMO's reaction is even worse. Instead of worrying about a lost child in the wilderness, BMO gets excited about having another character for their adventure. They start calling the baby Ricky, even though Bubble suggests Sparkle, because BMO needs to control everything. BMO drags this baby through dangerous situations, not because they have a plan to help her, but because having a baby makes their story more exciting. The bridge scene is really disturbing. When they hear scary noises and need to cross a dangerous bridge, BMO sends the baby first to see if it's safe. They act like this makes sense, but really BMO is just putting a helpless kid in danger to protect themselves. They treat the baby like he's expendable. When the baby falls off the bridge, BMO jumps after him, which seems brave. But even this is more about BMO wanting to feel like a hero than actually caring. Throughout the rescue, BMO keeps talking about their bravery and treating the situation like an exciting story instead of a real emergency where someone could die. The worst part comes when they find the baby's mother. BMO fights to keep the baby, saying he's Ricky and refusing to let him go even when his real mother shows up. BMO has gotten so attached to their version of the story, where they're protecting this baby, that they can't accept reality. The mother has to physically pull her child away while BMO tries to keep him. She tells BMO they should be ashamed, and she's right. Be More shows how deep BMO's selfishness goes when they're dealing with what should be a life-threatening crisis. BMO deletes their own system and starts breaking down, which should be terrifying. But instead of being scared or focused on getting help, BMO treats this like another fun adventure. When BMO explains that they need to go to the Mo factory, they focus on how dramatic everything is. They were born there. Only Mo's are allowed. Damaged Mo's get their memories erased. BMO talks about this like they're setting up an exciting heist movie instead of explaining a medical emergency. They even seem excited about the danger, saying their memories will vanish like tears in the oven. The really selfish part is how BMO treats Finn and Jake's help. These guys immediately drop everything to help BMO, come up with disguises, and risk getting hurt to sneak into the factory. But BMO acts like their sacrifice is just part of the fun. When Finn and Jake are getting shot at by security guards, BMO doesn't seem worried about their safety. They're just excited that the adventure is continuing. During the chase scene, when Finn tells BMO to hang on, BMO gives a weak thumbs up on their screen, like they're playing up being the hurt hero. Even while they're supposedly dying, BMO is performing instead of genuinely talking to their friends or showing gratitude. When they finally meet Mo, BMO's creator, the selfishness becomes even more obvious. BMO immediately perks up and starts acting cute, calling Mo their grandpoop. They're not interested in Mo as a person, or wanting to explain where they came from. They just want to be the special, beloved creation. When Mo explains that BMO was built to be more than other robots, BMO practically glows with pride. It's all about confirming how special they are. BMO's selfishness causes real damage to their relationships. In BMO Noir, Finn and Jake's actual fight gets ignored while BMO plays detective. Their argument about the sock shows they're having communication problems, but BMO's fantasy prevents any real solution. They just get distracted by finding the sock, and never deal with what caused the fight. In BMO Lost, BMO's self-centered approach puts everyone in unnecessary danger. The baby falls off a bridge, partly because BMO was treating everything like a story instead of being genuinely careful. Bubble gets emotionally attached to BMO, but BMO can't be a real friend. They just see Bubble as a companion character. The relationship with Bubble is especially sad because it shows how BMO's selfishness ruins genuine connections. Bubble falls in love with BMO and proposes, but BMO's response is more about the dramatic moment than actual feelings. When Jake pops Bubble, BMO cries dramatically, but when Bubble reveals they're now heir and will be with BMO forever, BMO just gets excited again. They can't deal with Bubble's real emotions. Everything has to go through BMO's sense of drama and adventure. Finn and Jake constantly sacrifice for BMO without getting real appreciation back. In Be More, they risk their lives to help BMO, but BMO treats their efforts like they're just playing assigned roles in BMO's story. When BMO gets fixed and meets their robot family, Finn and Jake are basically forgotten. BMO doesn't seem to understand that their friends went through genuine fear and danger to help them. What makes BMO's selfishness especially annoying is how it's disguised as being cute and innocent. Because BMO acts like a kid and does whimsical things, their self-centered behavior gets treated as adorable instead of problematic. But there's a difference between childish innocence and just being selfish. A truly innocent character would show more real empathy and concern for others. BMO's selfishness also stops them from ever growing or changing. Because they can't see beyond their own wants, they never learn from their mistakes or figure out better ways to treat people. Each episode basically resets BMO to the same selfish state where everything revolves around their entertainment or self-image. The sad part is that BMO could actually be a great friend if they tried. When they jumped after the baby on the bridge, there's real courage there. When they try to comfort Finn about his sock, there's genuine care. But these moments get ruined by BMO's need to make everything about themselves. BMO shows us something uncomfortable about how people sometimes treat other people's problems as entertainment. Their approach to Finn's missing sock, turning it into a fun mystery instead of just helping, is like how people sometimes get more excited about drama than actually helping. Their treatment of the baby as an adventure buddy instead of a lost child shows how we sometimes see others as characters in our story instead of real people with their own needs. What's really disturbing about BMO is how their selfishness looks like creativity and imagination. BMO's elaborate fantasies and role-playing seem charming, but they're really ways of avoiding genuine engagement with reality. Instead of dealing with the real world and actual relationships, BMO escapes into stories where they're always the star. This makes BMO more annoying than characters who are obviously selfish. At least with someone like Ice King, you can see the selfishness clearly. With BMO, their narcissism is wrapped up in cute packaging that makes it easy to miss how harmful it actually is. BMO never grows or changes, which makes them a character who often makes things worse instead of better. While Finn and Jake develop emotionally throughout the series and learn to be better friends, BMO stays stuck in their own world, treating every situation as material for their personal entertainment. Everyone around BMO deserves better than being supporting characters in someone else's fantasy, but BMO can't see past themselves enough to give it to them. If you liked our video, please subscribe to our channel.